do want to, speaking of pivot, perfect segue.
Yeah.
I do want to pivot now to Toontown, Mickey's Toontown over at Disneyland. Today is the very last day for Mickey's Toontown for quite a while. I think it's opens up again in about a year.
Yes. Yeah, about a year.
About a year. They're going to kind of, reimagine the land, freshen it up. We're going to get Mickey Minnie's Runaway Railway. So because it's the last day of operation for Toontown for a while, I thought it'd be kind of fun to kind of talk just about the land, its future, and everything like that. And so, Dre, what are your feelings on Toontown? What's on your mind with this reimagining and all this stuff?
Well, look, there was a time when Toontown I thought was going away forever. There was a time when it looked like, oh boy, this is I could see it moving out for a Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, or what we knew at the time, Star Wars Land, right? Or a Fantasyland expansion or so forth. And I think there were real discussions about that, for sure. And I think it was just like, well, if we reconfigure the river, we don't have to necessarily do that. We can actually keep Toontown. We can maintain Disneyland's capacity, because that's the thing. If you take over a land and you either redo it or destroy it and build something else on top of its place, have you really increased capacity?
Right, you don't
really, right? So it was like, well, if we reconfigure the river, we could also solve the issues with Fantasmic and have a marina for that, a covered marina. We could do like a whole bunch of stuff, right? They went with that, and I'm glad that they did, and preserved Toontown as a result. That is good, but the problem still remains that Toontown was in desperate need of help. It's been in need of help for like 10 years. Let's be honest here. We talked about the litigious society that we had before, right?
Right.
When the lawyers come in, and
right.
you may have opened something, right? You may have done something where it's like, hey, this is the land here. Here it is. Let's send it over to ops. And then the lawyers go into it and say, okay, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. You can't do that. There was some incidents, high-profile incidents that happened on Tom Sawyer's Island specifically. And I don't need to get into them, but some kids were injured, right? And that's when the lawyers started to take on a much more heavier presence when it came to the parks, because that it could open them up to lawsuits if they didn't.
Oh yeah.
And that's when we started to see the degradation of Toontown, of some interactive elements going away. Toontown had its own problems, had its own high-profile instance. That's why we lost Goofy's Bounce House. It's why we lost some things in
Jolly Trolley.
Jolly Trolley. That's a big one. Donald's Boat. But also there were some operational issues, like Chippendale's Treehouse, for example. It used to have a ball pit. Mm-hmm. And they knew about the problems when it came to cleaning the ball pit. And they had a way of doing it, which was whenever something happened, they could quickly vacuum out all of those balls, because they had like a custom unit designed to vacuum out all those balls, wash them backstage, and then put them all back. From what I understand, though, that hose didn't quite take into account the shape of those balls, which were the like acorns or nuts,
right?
And they would get lodged, and it didn't quite work out, and there was really no way to clean it. It became a problem, right? And so all these operational realities start coming forward, right? We talked about drones and all that. Well, the lands themselves have operational realities, and it's like, it's stuff we want to do, and then it becomes, what can we do? And fortunately, Toontown was like the biggest victim of that of all time. It just kept getting watered down, and the maintenance, wasn't as they weren't so great about it. Just put it like that, right? And you just see this land that was so vibrant at one point die, and it was a real shame.
It is, and I think that this new approach that they're going with the land is a smart one. Yeah. One of the new features in Toontown that's actually going to be replacing the Jolly Trolley station is a kind of like a little mini World of Color fountain. It's going to have LED light fountain shows periodically. That's the kind of stuff that Toontown really needs, because it lost a lot of kinetic energy when the trolley shut down. that kind of fountain show, I think, is going to add a lot to the land. And that's something that's not going to interfere, like what you were talking about, with the operations. It's separate from where guests are. You watch it from, the sidelines, so to speak. So I think this is a smart direction. And I think you're going to see a lot of those kind of changes in this land. A lot of like fun elements, but don't really incorporate like the possibility of anyone getting hurt. You might even see, I suggested a long time ago, projection mapping on the new hills behind Toontown. I would love to see a nightly show where those hills came alive with like cartoon birds and a moon through projection mapping. Stuff like that would be really, really fun to bring the land alive. That's the kind of stuff I think that we're going to see with this reimagining. And I think it's definitely the right approach. When they built Toontown in the early 90s, they really dropped the ball in a lot of ways with all this stuff, like the ball pit and all stuff, because they just didn't factor in any of that. And I'm surprised they didn't. I'm really surprised they didn't. You're talking about the general public. You have to account that, people might get hurt in this bounce house. Like it's like a recipe for disaster almost. You have a bunch of kids in here bouncing around, literally bouncing off the walls. Come on, Disney, Come on.
I know. And there was a high profile incident at the bounce house at, Goofy's house, and, a kid hit their head, and that's why we don't have a bouncy house anymore. You had the Jolly Trolley. It looks great, but if you got kids running around the land, literally, that can become very hazardous if you have this trolley kind of bouncing around in all these different places. Right. You just have some things that happen. It's just like, oh, come on. Like, you have to take this into account. And they didn't. And because of that, the vibrancy of this land was really stripped for a lot of time. And now I'm, your point about projection mapping on the back, like that, it's awesome. And you kind of realize, wow, this is the 21st century, right? We can incorporate technologies that the Imagineers back in the early 90s didn't have. They, couldn't dreamed to have access to at any time, right? And we can kind of incorporate some of these things that make it not just modern but fresh,
Right.
And I think some of the concepts and stuff that I've been saying, I think they really, really do look good. I'm also glad to hear that Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin is going to be maintained. Yes. Love that attraction. It really is a kind of an underrated dark ride. It's kind of an underrated gem, but people, APs know like that. It's a good ride. It's a great experience, and so I was really glad that got saved. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say too. Speaking of saving, I think one of the big factors in regards to because we were talking about rumors 2, 3, 4 years ago or so about, like you even mentioned earlier in the segment, about how like they were really considering like Toontown like becoming part of Galaxy's Edge, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the big saving graces for Toontown, believe it or not, are those Mickey Mouse shorts. Those Mickey Mouse shorts have become such a juggernaut for Disney. Extremely popular. And I'm sure the merchandise sales reflect that and everything else. And I think that because of the success of that is why we're getting things like Runaway Railway and why Toontown's getting saved. I think that's a big part of this equation. I really do. I think if it was not for those shorts, it would probably be a different situation with Toontown, I think.
Maybe. It's possible. I think it would be a much different situation when it comes to making Minnie's Runaway Railway. That's for sure. A large part of what they did with that attraction was predicated on those shorts. And if there's really no future for Mickey for Mickey's Toontown in the form of Mickey's Runaway Railway, where does Toontown go at that point?
Right.
It was Runaway Railway that gave it new life and gave a reason. Okay, let's really redo Toontown. Whereas if those shorts aren't as impactful as they have been, and Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway never gets made in the way it does, maybe Mickey's Toontown never gets saved in the way it does. Right. So I do agree with you. Just it maybe not directly, but indirectly, absolutely, you can point to those shorts as being extremely impactful to the future of Toontown.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this is coming from someone who's not this is you better get those fire extinguishers ready, folks, because this is a hot take. I'm going nuclear.
Let's do it. Going nuclear.
I'm going nuclear, baby. I'm not actually a big fan of the Mickey Mouse shorts. I think a lot of the animation style reminds me of like Ren and Stimpy. You know what?
Yeah.
Remember when you used to watch Ren and Stimpy? Like they would zoom in on the characters' faces and be like this really grotesque, like super detailed thing.
Yes.
You know what I'm talking about? And they do that in these Mickey Mouse shorts a lot. It just doesn't fit the characters. It's weird to me. Not a huge fan of it. Some of it works. There's a lot of cool Easter eggs for the nerds like us.
Yeah.
But a lot of it doesn't work for me. I'm not a huge fan. And, that's fine. But I have to acknowledge reality, and then I'm in the minority with that opinion. And most people love these shorts, and they've been very popular. And I think that has a huge part in this, so.
Animation has changed, and we live in a post-Ren and Stimpy world, which, kind of reflects that in some way with these shorts, right? The guy who does them, he previously worked on the Powerpuff Girls and then Samurai Jack and so forth, so he comes at it from that perspective. And yes, like he does incorporate some modern animation trends and techniques that yes, I will agree with you. I'm not a particular fan of either, but I don't know. I think they're enjoyable for what they are.
Yeah.
I think they're entertaining for what they are, and they have brought new life to the character of Mickey Mouse. I mean, it's been a while since we saw Mickey Mouse be as prolific in terms of animation, in terms of shorts, in terms of, pop culture media to this extent via these shorts that we have seen. So I am grateful for that, at least. There is some interesting things, too. Okay, they talked about, we had a recent blog post that talked about saving, obviously Mickey, Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin's going to be, that's going to be preserved, right? They kind of just, put those rumors to bed that it was going somewhere. It really wasn't, it was always kind of, it's just, I never really give those rumors credence. Even in the idea that Toontown was going away, I never thought that Roger Rabbit was going away because it's just too iconic. And
it was so weird to me that rumor was going around. It was so weird to me because they announced that they were reimagining it with the Jessica Rabbit situation, making her a private eye. And then they dropped the concept art for the land, and people were like, "Oh, well, Cartoon Spin has real nondescript looking decor on it. Are they thinking about getting rid of it?" I'm like, of course they're not. They just announced they're going to reimagine Jessica's role in the attraction.
Right.
It would make no sense. So I agree with you. It was always a given that this attraction was safe, especially after they, announced officially that Jessica Rabbit's getting a different role. Of course they're going to.
Yeah, exactly. And even if Toontown was going away, I always felt that Roger Rabbit could stay because it's so off to the side. Like, it doesn't interact with anything at all. You can do it in a way to make these whole things work and stuff and preserve that right. I never really bought into the idea, especially after the Jessica Rabbit thing came out, like you said, OG, that this was going away. So that's good. But they recently talked about that and a couple other things. Do we know the status of Go Coaster?
We do not. Yeah. We do not. I'm hearing murmurs. I assumed, and this is just my layman speculation, fanboy, kind of theory, but I would assume, look, Disney is really big on Chip and Dale right now. You go to the parks and there's a ton of Chip and Dale merch, which is actually pretty good. Chip and Dale merch right now is pretty fire. And there's a lot of it. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they got that new Park Life show on D+.
Yep.
And that new Chip and Dale Rescue Ranger film is coming out.
Which looks
so
awesome.
There's a big push for Chip and Dale. I think if I were to guess, I think they're just going to kind of reskin it to have more of a Chip and Dale angle, kind of remove the gadget, and it's more Chip and Dale's nut coaster, whatever you want to call it, and go down that avenue. I would be surprised, and I've heard rumors that they're going to completely demo it and put something else there. I would be shocked if they did that, but hey, I've been wrong before. I don't know.
So it's interesting because I will agree with you. I think they are going to keep it and just do a Chip and Dale theme rather than Gadget themed, because who knows who Gadget is right now? I know the Rescue Rangers thing is coming out, but I didn't even see Gadget in there.
I don't think she's in it. Yeah,
that's an interesting take on that too. I like Gadget the character, I really do, but it's there's operational realities, right? Nobody quite knows who she is. So can you theme it to something like Chip and Dale, especially in the event that Chip and Dale's treehouse is going away, which is another thing we'll get into very shortly. But I just want to say, yes, if you look at the artwork of the land, you do actually see Gadget's Go Coaster back there. Now, obviously, things change and things get developed and so forth. I don't want to say that that's definitive, right? I think people take a lot more out of concept artwork than maybe they should. I think we've said that before too. Totally. But I'm pretty sure Go Coaster is going to stay just rethemed, not unlike they did with Barnstormer, in Magic Kingdom, right? They can do some similar touch up there. It does need touch up, or like you said, OG, the other thing, maybe remove it and replace it with something else. I think Toontown needs another attraction like this, so I would think it's staying.
Yeah, I think it's staying. I think it's safe. It'll be reskinned. Mickey's house is next door, but you're already getting a Mickey ride with Runaway Railway. So I don't think they're going to go Mickey themed for that. I guess you could go Donald themed because his boat's right there. It's a possibility, I guess. But I don't know. I'm really bullish on Chip and Dale.
Especially with Chip and Dale's treehouse potentially going away, because that I have not seen any concepts that include that. And if it is, it's going away for a reason. So I have this map up here.
Okay.
This is interesting because you see right here where Chip and Dale's treehouse is. You could take it and make a pathway all the way to Galaxy's Edge, where actually that's where the drop-off is for Batuu East. Wow. In Orlando at Disney's Hollywood Studios. When people come in from the Star Cruiser, they get dropped off right there. So that is already a pathway entry that is being used by the company right now, just on the other coast, right?
Right.
And you can connect these points if you do get rid of Chip and Dale's treehouse, and I think that's what we're going to see.
Interesting.
With the opening of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, because here's the thing. Here's the reason why you would do this, and you can kind of see it here. Sam Carter was kind enough to illustrate this. Let me see.
Yeah, big shout out to Sam Carter. He was on the channel a while back. We were talking entertainment. He's a great guy. I love.
Oh, really? Oh man, he is great. He is awesome. That I did not know that. He's incredible, right? But he illustrates this quite plainly right here. But the reason why I bring up this map is because to get to Mickey's Toontown, you have to go through the corridor, right? Through this one entryway between Small World and the Fantasyland Theater, right? Okay. Because of that, if you want to get to Mickey's Toontown from the west side of the park, at least large swaths of it, right? If you're in Galaxy's Edge, if you're near Splash Mountain, if you're near Haunted Mansion, and if you want to use the Galaxy's Edge corridor and so forth, to get to Toontown from the west side, you have to go through this narrow corridor right here.
Yep.
And anybody who's been in the park, next to the teacups and next to Storybook Land, knows this is an incredibly bad pitch point right here, right? It puts a lot of stress on this area, and as Toontown opens, it'll put a lot of stress on this entry fare as well. But if you connect these 2 points, you will alleviate a lot of the problems that you get from here and here. And I think that's where they're going. I think they're using this time wisely, I might add, with this area being closed to connect these points. Now, it'll probably be a temporary setup because the idea for the area above this has been set aside for the third attraction for Galaxy's Edge.
Okay.
That's what will go there eventually. And you can actually see the box where the restaurant was going to go.
Oh.
Like, they just literally just pulled it out. So frustrating. Anyway, but it'll probably be something temporary because I think the idea is, okay, when we build the third attraction, we can have a pathway that's nice and themed and it's integrated and all that kind of stuff. But when you have two attractions, the hot new attractions of Disneyland, Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway and Rise of Resistance, in such close proximity to each other, but you have to go through this kind of elongated path, that's not good operationally. Like you have to facilitate that you have to facilitate that traffic better. And I think this is the way they're going to do it.
That's interesting. That's fascinating. You know, I was actually going to ask you, that was my follow-up question, is what they would theme that to. And you answered it when you said that when they build a third attraction in Galaxy's Edge, they'd go in there probably like a lot of rock work or something and really transition it out.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And it would really help with the flow of the park. Toontown has always been a dead end.
It does.
And I think it's been to its detriment. I think that's part of the reason why it's not as busy as other areas of the park, because it is kind of out in the, isolated kind of. And I think that if you connect it all, I think you see a lot more traffic through there.
You see a lot more traffic. The flow would be much better. And you're exactly right. You have to trek out to Toontown to get out there, right? And, that's an impediment to visitation because it's all the way in the back of the park. And when you're there, you're stuck there. And you have to double back, and people don't like to do that. We saw the enhanced traffic that arose as a result of Galaxy's Edge completing that circuit around Rivers of America. Even with Splash Mountain there, Critter Country never got the traffic that it was supposed to, even all the way back going to the 1970s with Bear Country. It just never got the traffic. You just never get people back there because you had to travel all the way back there and then double back. When Galaxy's Edge was installed, now that circuit's complete, and now people don't have to double back on their flow, right? And like you said, the flow of traffic in this particular area would be much improved if they connect these 2 points. I think that's why we're going to see Chippendale Treehouse potentially go away. Maybe could be relocated. I'm not sure. They have done that before with trees. Surprisingly, in Magic Kingdom, they've moved, I think, Pooh's tree a couple times, right? They could, but I think the bigger issue is we got to connect these 2 points. And I think it will be temporarily themed that way when a third attraction comes out. They can really theme it for real as it is integrated into that space, right? So think like the back way of like Main Street, like the Tomorrowland side. You can kind of go back there. They only open it up during fireworks and so forth. Think something like that, but maybe tent it over so that you can't see some of these structures. And I think that's what they would do here.
Dre, you brought up an interesting point, and you really kind of triggered the juices in my head.
Oh, good.
It just clicked, and this could be a possibility. I don't know, but you mentioned the tree, the tree house.
Yeah,
you said that they could either get rid of it or they can reuse it. Well, you know what? I mean, it might be a long shot, but they did announce Walt's Dream Tree or Walt's Wishing Tree or something in the front of the land. It's a tree dedicated to Walt Disney. I could definitely see them kind of moving this tree to the front, and obviously you can, because the Chippendale Treehouse it's not like full like the Tarzan Treehouse is. Yeah. I don't think it really has a lot of leaves on top, but you can take the base of it, the general structure of it, put it in the front, and add to it, make it full on top, and have that wishing tree. I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do remove the treehouse, they move it to the front. That's why we're getting that tree in the front. It's probably going to be the old treehouse.
I never thought about this until you said it, and now it's like, oh my God, that makes a lot of sense. that makes a lot of, because listen, in this age of post-pandy, and we've got to send all of our investment dollars towards DTC, right, towards Disney Plus and all that kind of stuff, right? You're gonna look at value Imagineering for just a little bit until we get more investment in the parks division itself, and it's like, wow, a custom tree, that's a lot of money. But like you said, if they just move it, then that would be a value engineering, but it would be a great solution. A great thing for both Toontown to complete this flow, but also saving that tree and repurposing it for a different purpose.
Yeah, and
there's a fascinating thing.
And there's a precedent for this, even kind of recently with California Adventure.
Yeah.
There was in Bugs Land, there was a store called PT Fleas. And they actually, when they renovated DCA about a decade ago now or more, they took PT Fleas and they literally moved that entire structure over to the Paradise Garden Grill area. And you're on mute, by the way.
I was gonna try to see. Let me try to look it up here. Sorry about the ads at
No
the
worries.
front page there.
PT Flea.
PT Fleet. I think it's like Market.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
There it is.
that's
That
it.
was it. And
That
now
was
it's over
it.
at the Paradise Grill.
And
And if
now
you
it's over at
Yep, now
Paradise
it's over at
Grill.
Paradise Grill. I
There.
don't know. Is that it? I think
Yeah, that's it right
now.
there. That's Goofy's Sky Skull in the back right there. You can see that.
So there, and that's I would argue probably a more complicated endeavor moving that structure than even the tree. So if they're willing to do it for that,
I think so. I think so. And there was an instance where there was a tree. So Magic Kingdom, when they got rid of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and the Submarine Lagoon and so forth, they put up, I think, like a child's play area themed to Winnie the Pooh. And as they did it, it was they put a tree there, right? And in the tree, you can see like this tiny little imprint of a submarine from the previous lagoon, the Nautilus, right? You can kind of see it kind of imprinted on the inside of the tree, and that was a nod to that attraction and where that tree sat. Well, when New Fantasyland came about, they moved that tree to a different spot, so that Nautilus thing is still there, but it's in a different spot. Doesn't quite work, but they have done this before.
yeah,
I think you're right. I think they might repurpose the tree, which would be kind of a cool thing.
it would be. It would be cool. It would be cool. And even like teacups, right? At Disneyland, that the teacups used to sit where King Arthur's Carousel sits now, and they moved it over to over by Alice, which actually makes a lot more sense. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it is a fascinating thing, you know. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't work. For example, I think there were stories of Baxter attempting to move the Jolly Roger, the pirate ship from the back of Fantasyland, right? That used to exist where Dumbo sits now, and then Skull Rock, and those things just crumbled upon their attempts to move them, right? I've heard conflicting stories. I've heard it two ways. I've heard it they tried to move it and it just crumbled and they couldn't do anything with it, so they just demolished it. I've also heard that the intent was always to build those two structures, the Skull Rock and Jolly Roger, again, but in the Small World Mall area, right? But those plans never developed because Phase 2 of the New Fantasyland project was scaled down after New Fantasyland opened, didn't move the needle. Anyway, I've heard these things before. But thinking about what you said just now, I think you're right. I think they might be reusing that tree. I
think so.
Oh, how devilishly clever of them.
I know it is. It is. It's absolutely. It's fascinating. Now, I do want to also say there was news, and I think this is actually official news. If I'm not mistaken, but the Disneyland version of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway is actually going to get a new scene, I believe.
Yes.
In addition to what Florida has, we're going to get a new scene, which I think is fantastic. And I've been saying it all along. I think that our Runaway Railway will more than likely be the superior version, just because it's being built from the ground up. They don't have to work within the confines of an existing structure. They can design this building specifically for this ride, and I think there's benefit to that. You know?
Oh yeah. Oh, there's huge benefits to it. You know, it's and people are kind of upset that Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, you know, they're getting scenes out there. We didn't get them or whatever. Let me just remind you all that this has happened before. The second iteration of an attraction always gets more every single time. Okay,
right.
Take Splash. I know it's a controversial attraction. Exactly. Be fair to Florida, right? Well, I'm going to be fair in this moment because back in Splash Mountain's day, we got the first iteration of Splash Mountain, and we know what that is, right? And to be fair to Florida, right? They got a version of Splash Mountain that was way better. That was just that had all kinds of new stuff, right?
Oh yeah.
We saw with Haunted Mansion. When Haunted Mansion opened in 1969 in Disneyland, it had a series of show scenes and sets and elements, right? And then when Magic Kingdom, as part of Walt Disney World, was actually being thought up and dreamed up, Haunted Mansion wasn't opening the attraction in 1971, and they could place it wherever they wanted to. They weren't constrained to the same constraints that was, you know, that they had to be when it came to the development of Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, right? They could place it whatever they want. They can place a show building where they want and so forth. And as a result, they got new scenes. Well,
here we go.
Sometimes it works in your favor and sometimes it works in ours.
Right.
Florida, you can go ahead and kick rocks because we're getting new scenes and it's awesome. Now,
yeah.
Secondarily, though, I think this will be a multi-use facility for the Disneyland Resort. And which might be why it was placed in the way it was placed and why we might be getting new scenes and why this thing's so tall, right? I think they might be using this for, we can look back here. I think they might be using the top of this structure potentially for back of house stuff. I think that's right. We know they're going to be using the top of this structure for fireworks launching.
Interesting.
And you can actually see that setup right here, because I think we've talked about it before on the show where previously they used a series of scissor lifts to get those fireworks to be in those locations. Very dangerous. Okay, extremely dangerous. And I think that also played into the fact that Toontown had to close at a certain time for the fireworks. And now being relocated to the back of this structure right here and in place and actually having a fireworks elevator and so forth, I think confidently not only will Toontown be able to open, be open longer, but this will be operationally for the Disneyland Resort a big boon. So
awesome.
That's why.
Well, this building is definitely a huge plus for the land, aside from the attraction itself, because the hills behind Toontown prior to this building were flimsy. I mean, they looked like plywood. It was very cheaply kind of put together, and it seems like, at least from the construction, that the new hills are much more substantial. They're more cement. They're much more, you just feel more dense and better quality, and higher too. And I think that's going to really benefit. Now we're going into nerd territory. Okay, this is getting real nerdy right now. But I think the new hills, because of the height and like kind of the thickness and the better quality, what have you, I think it's really going to help the immersion of the land. I think when you're in that little land and you have these huge cartoon hills that are going to kind of loom over you, it's going to make an impact. I think much more than before with those little tiny, it's going to be, I think, a different experience,
I think it is. And I think the art direction of those hills and so forth will have impacted the land so much so that like a redo of Toontown itself is necessary in order to blend into those things. So I think it works both ways. And I think you're right. You are going to have a much more immersive setting because of those hills. And like you've said before, projection services, I think they absolutely can. I think it's oh man, the potential is there for this to be really, really special. Hopefully it works out a little bit better than maybe a certain theme park in LA with their new land and with their version of hills and flat hills. If you know what I'm talking about.
Super Nintendo World?
Nintendo World, yeah.
What's going on with their? I don't follow Universal as much. I'm not really familiar with what the deal is with that.
Okay, let me look it up and we'll show you. So they're working on their own version of the land. It opened at
Tokyo,
right? And when you look at this one, let me just see.
Actually, I take that back. I'm not sure if Universal is in Tokyo, but it's in the Japan.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm not sure if it's Tokyo or not, but it is Japan.
I thought it was Universal Osaka. I think that's what it is.
So.
Yeah, not in Tokyo. Right. You're right. It's kind of close, but yeah, you're exactly right. See, you saved me. But here, if you want to share my screen there.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a little like these hills, not nearly as great looking. Now there will be other architecture features part of this land, but it's a little, it's a little underwhelming. Hopefully they don't go this route. I don't think they are. And even if they do, there is a potential to spruce this up a lot at night, like you said. So right. I think we might be getting a better version of this kind of animation style, but we will see.
Well, and I'm also interested to know what kind of new materials Universal and Disney will be using for these new hills, because Toontown and at Disneyland has had a history of fading paint. The hills, they would paint them, and like a month later you can already see them fading.
Yeah.
I'm very curious because obviously there's been a lot of progress in tech and what have you. I wonder if they're going to use some other material, maybe not even paint, something else that they can use for these hills, that they won't have that fading problem. And I'm curious what Universal is using too. Because obviously these are very detailed. When you look at them, there's a lot of design work in these, stuff. You can't be painting these every 6 months. It's expensive,
right? Yeah, it's extremely expensive, and that Southern California sun,
yeah,
it gets the best of us, and it got the best of Toontown a lot. And it was even like a worse problem too, because like apparently like it was like almost stretched tarp. And it would like tear and stuff. It would like flake. It would like really bad. And I even heard a story where they were taking it off for the construction of Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, and it just like the whole thing just collapsed and fell off like in all one go, and they didn't really anticipate for that. And it's like, oh wow, these need to be changed anyway, kind of thing. I am very curious as to how they solve that problem, because that is an issue that they've had to contend with for various projects. I know for Cars Land over there in Disney's California Adventure, when the rockwork was actually going in, they used a primer that was kind of in the color of the final product. It was like a brownish color rather than the gray that we usually see. And that's because if it ever flakes off, it doesn't just go gray, right? It goes kind of in line, so you don't really notice it all that much. So go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say too, a little fun fact, and I don't know how many people know this because this was a while back. I'm kind of dating myself here, I think, a little bit, but I've been in the community for a while. But when they were redoing the submarine lagoon for Finding Nemo, the lagoon had historically had a paint problem too. It would fade a lot, the coral and what have you.
Yes.
And what they did for Nemo was that the paint that they use for the coral, the undersea stuff, is actually melted glass.
Yes.
Yeah. So it would still fade, but it wasn't as problematic as traditional,
Right. And the idea, it's kind of great that you bring this up, because I actually attended a panel with the Imagineer who actually thought of this process, and who implemented it for Finding Nemo Submarine Voyage. And what she was talking about was, go to the old cathedrals in Europe, right? Notre Dame existed back then. So you can see like that glass has never faded, right? That glass, that the stained glass windows have retained their saturation levels for thousands of years. So the idea was, what if we could take that same process of stained glass, of tinted glass and so forth, and just kind of like make it into almost like a powder, and then shoot it off at kind of a high velocity, and coat the exterior of whatever we do with this colored glass in order to prevent the lagoon from fading, because that is like a big part of the maintenance costs of maintaining that attraction. And I will say they got more life out of it than they otherwise would have, but it still kind of faded.
It still faded. No, yeah, it did. It had the longevity compared to if they use traditional materials, but it definitely did fade again.
Yeah,
for sure.
So but in that though, I think there are solutions that by which you can incorporate into this project that would have it be a longer lasting thing than maybe what they did in the 90s. Because Toontown itself will always fade, but those hills in particular, the hills and the cityscape kind of backdrops there, they always look terrible. They always look bad. I'm really, really hoping that whatever solution that they implement, it'll be there for the long haul.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating. It's a bittersweet day in the closing of Toontown as we know it. Mm-hmm. But I think Toontown's future has never looked brighter, to be honest. I mean, this is something that is so overdue for Toontown, and
Mhm.
I think that it's really going to look phenomenal when the land reopens and everything has a fresh coat of paint
Mhm.
and those gorgeous new hills and the new attraction. And I think it's really a huge plus. So
And can we just say one thing too?
sure, sure.
Can we get an ink and paint club? You know what I'm saying? Like, can't
Yes.
like I know it's not in the plans and the budget, but eventually, can we at least get a ink and paint club? Can we get kind of some restaurant or bar out there? Because
Right.
right now there's really no food program out there worth speaking of, and I think there'll be even less options when this land eventually opens up. Can we get something? You know, that would be great. Your ink and paint club idea was a great one, and if we're gonna do that, then we should just get rid of the alcohol limitations on Disneyland. Finally,
Right.
like go with an end of line club bar at Tomorrowland. Let's really do it up.
Let's do it up. And the Ink and Paint Club, as featured in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when it would be incredible walking into that
Mhm.
and having like an animatronic octopus behind the bar,
Yes,
right? I
yes,
mean, it would
yes.
be so cool. The themed bars at
Mhm.
Disney parks are big money.
Oh yeah,
And I mean, look at Oga's Cantina. And I mean, you could do so much with a Toontown Ink and Paint Club
yeah.
kind of situation. I would
You've
be so
already got it.
all in.
Oh, you already got a drink, right? Eddie Valiant's drink that he orders with The Rock, right in
Yes.
there, right? Like, you've already got like, there's so many concepts, and then for your entertainment, you could have, maybe Donald up there with the piano, or yeah, like you said, with the octopus playing back there. I
Right.
mean, there's so many great ideas. Hell, you wouldn't even have to necessarily make them dimensional. You could even make them flat, and it would
Right.
it would be in line with some of the other notions that we've seen in the land. Like, oh man, there's so much to that idea. I really hope they we can get it. We can get it.
I hope so. I think there's a lot of potential there.